In this series, and exclusive to this channel, I'll be taking you through the evidence in full that Lucy Letby gave to the court during her 10 days on the witness stand. The purpose behind this series is to give you, the viewer, a full and factual understanding of the evidence presented to Lucy Letby during her original trial. What you'll hear next is Lucy Letby's cross-examination in court. This took place at Manchester Crown Court and was conducted by Nicholas Johnson, KC. Now, we're moving on to child C. Born on the 10th of June 2015 and died at about 5 a.m. on June 14th, although the event for which we allege you to be responsible that caused his death happened just before midnight on June 13th, and more particularly at about 11:15 that night. I'd like to start with your defence statement on this one, please, so page 7. It starts with you saying that you did nothing to hurt him at paragraph 50. Is that right? Yes. You say that on the night of the 13th to the 14th of June, you had the care of another child, J.E., in nursery 3. Yes. At paragraph 52, you say, my recollection of events prior to the collapse of child C is vague, but I don't remember being in nursery 1. I don't think Sophie Ellis is correct when she says I was. Yes. You then continued at paragraph 53. I think I heard the alarms going off, but I didn't go straight to child C. I don't know whether I was walking past the nursery or how I came to go in there. It may have been I was called in because of the collapse, but at night time sometimes we have to go into nursery 1, even if we're working in nursery 3, for example to check equipment for the ITU spaces. But I don't recall being in there when child C collapsed. Then you continue at paragraph 56 by saying, I did have some contact with child C's family, but not to the extent described by his mother. As a matter of fact, just on that point, child C's mother's evidence was agreed, wasn't it? Do you remember it was read to the jury? Yes. You then continue by saying, I didn't speak to child C's mother asking if she wanted a priest to be called, nor was I the person who handed child C to his mother after we had stopped resuscitation. I don't think I helped with the footprint or taking a lock of child C's hair. I do not recall asking if the parents wanted to put child C in a basket or any awkward conversation. And again, that specific point, putting his body in a basket, this is something that child C's mother suggests you said and was agreed evidence, wasn't it? Yes. You then continued, after child C had died, I was still looking after J.E. That would have been my focus. Now, just to bring it back to mind, this particular shift, this is a shift where your colleague Nurse G suggested that she had to keep, in effect, removing you from the parents' room as child C was dying and just after he died. Do you remember that evidence? Yes. I'm going to suggest that your assertion in your defence statement that your recollection of events prior to child C's collapse being vague is not true. What do you say? I don't agree with that. You don't. And I'm going to suggest that you enjoyed what happened, and that's why you were in and out of the family room. No. You had been off on Thursday the 11th and Friday the 12th of June, hadn't you? Yes. And you were back in on the night shift of Saturday the 13th. Yes. When you were being interviewed, did you remember child C? Yes. Why did you say that you didn't? I'm not sure what you mean. My police interview? Yes. I'm not sure what detail I had to start with, but I know I remembered him once I had more details. I'm not sure what I was told at the very beginning. Well, we'll come to the detail. Is it your case that staffing levels contributed to child C's death? No, I don't know how child C died. Is it your case that medical competence or incompetence contributed? No. Or that anybody made a mistake? No. Do you accept that child C progressed well, having been born in good condition? I can only go on what other people's notes were. I'd not looked after child C before. But do you accept that the evidence is that child C was doing well? I think there had been issues with his abdomen and things, but he wasn't perfectly healthy. That's why he was in a neonatal unit. But there were no causes for concern, were there? Not that I recall, no. I will just remind you of some of the context. The jury and you may remember that this is a case where one of the notes in the nursing notes was misfiled on a different baby's file, and when child C had died, it was transferred from that file to child C's file. It was a note made by Yvonne Griffiths. Do you remember that? Yes. We've seen in many cases, haven't we, that in the nursing notes the time that the file entry is opened is recorded by a computer. Yes. And the time that is entered into the system is also recorded. Yes, the time it's completed. Yes. Yes. Once a nursing note is completed, is it editable? No. And that perhaps is the reason why this particular note couldn't simply be transferred across. It had to be rewritten. Yes. Okay, let's start with that because that gives us a position on the day shift of Friday the 12th of June. It's tile 273, please. These concern events at 18:30 on the day shift of Friday the 12th of June. Just to remind us all, YG, Yvonne Griffiths, we can see that that note is actually entered after child C had died. We've got an 8-minute window in which these were typed between 17:38 and 17:46 on the 14th of June. We see that these are characterised or described as on reflection notes from 12/6/15 for day shift, written in CM's notes for child C. So presumably that was the family name of the child in whose notes this was entered erroneously. Do you agree? Yes. So nursing notes printed and rewritten as follows. We see here by N CPAP inner pressure and it gives the figures. NERS, which we know are nostrils, red but not broken. Duoderm applied. No apneas noted. Caffeine given as prescribed. Child C unsettled at times. Soothes with pacifier. Enjoyed kangaroo care with parents. Then material about the X-ray of the long line and the fact that the NGT had been aspirated and 2 ml of black stain fluid obtained. Child C had been having... What is kangaroo care? Would you just remind us, please? It's when the baby takes its clothes off and is put against the mother or father's chest skin. Otherwise known as skin to skin? Yes. When a child is enjoying kangaroo care with parents, of course the child is not on any form of breathing support. Is that right? No, we can do kangaroo care with breathing support, but they would be stable enough to be brought out. All right. But as a matter of fact, I'll suggest that child C had been off breathing support, and we'll come to some documentation in a moment. But if we go backwards, please, Mr. Murphy, although forwards in time to tile 41. This is Mel Taylor's nursing note, and we see in the centre of the screen there to the left, remained nil by mouth, tummy soft, not distended. Dark bile obtained from OGT, Registrar Davies aware. To continue nil by mouth for now and monitor. Bowels not opened. Past urine. Right? Yes. So that's overnight, the 12th to the 13th. The day shift, in other words, the shift immediately before the shift on which you were working and child C died. It was Joanne Williams who looked after him. I just want to deal with what happened on that day. If we start, please, with the nursing tile at 116. So we see there at the top JW for Joanne Williams, creation time 16:19. Nursed on CPAP, pressures given. Capillary blood gas at 9 o'clock, very good. However, child C very unsettled and fractious. After discussion with Registrar Ogden, taken off CPAP whilst out having skin to skin with mum. Calmed down straight away while on mum. Just required some facial oxygen while out. No signs of increased work of breathing. You read it all to yourself, if you would please. Is that a positive picture? Yes. Can we go to tile 67, please? This document gives us a ready reckoner for what sort of breathing support child C was on, doesn't it? Yes. Do we see from that document that he was on the 13th, so this is the day on which he died, that he was on CPAP up to 10 a.m, 1000 hours? Yes. There was nothing at all, no breathing support, other than, if we remember what was in the nursing note, the ambient oxygen at 11 and 12. Yes. And he then went on to Optiflow, so not CPAP, Optiflow at 1300 hours. Yes. And that remained a position until the event that terminated with his, or culminated with his death. Yes. If we go to tile 120 next, please, it's another note of Joanne Williams. It's the note at 1800 on the 13th. Capillary blood gas at 1800 showed improvement from previous capillary blood gas. However, lactate risen to 2.5 millimoles, SHO informed. Remained stable on Optiflow, blood pressure stable. Aspirates reduced this evening. Query, commence enteral feeding tonight. Do you remember that? Yes. And do you remember that it was Dr. Gibbs who directed the commencement of enteral feeding? I can't remember who authorised it, but I know, yes, the doctors had agreed he could start feeds, yes. And do you remember the evidence of Dr. Marnarides, the pathologist, who said that the histology showed that child C did not have any bowel issue? Yes. Let's move on then to the shift on which you were present. It's tile 138, please. Here we see the population list of the NNU, 12 children on the unit. We see that you had a child, JE. Yes. JE was in nursery 3, wasn't he? Do you remember? Yes. And this, to bring it back, he was the child with the breathing problems that Nurse G thought were worthy of close monitoring. Yes. Your other child that evening was a child PE. Do you see? Yes. And so far as nursery 1 was concerned, we heard evidence from several witnesses that there were 2 children in, although we haven't got a population distribution chart. We heard from several witnesses that child C was in nursery 1. Yes. And so was another child who was being looked after by Melanie Taylor, who we see in the list at number 8, MRE. Yes. Do you recall there being any other children in nursery 1? No. So the evidence suggests, would you agree, that there were 2 children in nursery 1, one of whom was child C, the other MRE. From this, yes. Yes. Well, not only from this, but all the evidence that we've heard in the trial relating to this event, so from all your colleagues who gave evidence. There were 3 babies in nursery 1. No, 2 babies in nursery 1, 2 in number 1, and you were looking after 2 in nursery 3. Okay. I'm not sure if that's what they've said, so... First of all, I'm going to suggest to you that this was yet another shift on which you migrated from either nursery 3 or 4 back into nursery 1. Yes, in response to child C's care needs. No, before child C collapsed. I don't have any recollection of that. Do you remember Nurse G told us she was the shift leader on this shift? Yes. And do you remember her telling us that she had to tell you to look after him rather than getting yourself involved with other children? Yes. Is that true? No, I don't recall that conversation. Are you saying you reject it, or simply you don't remember? I don't remember a conversation like that happening. I'm going to suggest that you were very unhappy with the arrangements that she had made, which dictated where you were working. Do you agree that you were unhappy at being in nursery 3? Yes, but that wasn't down to Nurse G. It was down to the shift leader on the previous shift. Right. But you were unhappy about being in 3? Yes, I expressed that I would have liked to go into nursery 1, yes. Yes, we have heard a bit of evidence about that from various people, but as a matter of practice, does the leader of the shift on which the nurses are actually working have the capacity to redistribute labour? Yes. So if you had asked Nurse G, she would have had the power to redistribute, to put you somewhere else if she thought that was appropriate. Yes. As a matter of fact, do you agree that she thought J.E. needed your attention? He did need attention, yes, and I gave him that attention. Let's look at how unhappy you were, because I'm suggesting this is precisely how you were. Starting at tile 146, please. This is your friend Jennifer Jones-Key asking if you're all right. Tile 147. You read to us what you replied, please. I replied, I just keep thinking about Monday, feel like I need to be in 1 to overcome it, but Nurse G said no. Monday was child A, is that right? Yes. Tile 148 is Jennifer Jones-Key. I agree with her. Don't think it will help. Need a break from full-on ITU. You have to let it go or it will eat you up. I know not easy and will take time. Then tile 149, your message please. I replied, not the vented baby necessarily. I just feel I need to be in 1 to get the image out of my head. Mel said the same and Nurse G let her go. Being in 3 is eating me up. All I can see is him in 1. The vented baby we know was not child C, don't we? Yes. This was the other baby in nursery 1 who was ME or MAE as he appears in the list. Is that right? Yes, on the list, yes. So you wanted to look after child C, didn't you? If there were 2 babies in nursery 1. I don't think I'm referring specifically to child C. I can't. There's a field of 2 available for care in nursery 1. You want to be in nursery 1, and you're saying, well, okay, I won't have the vented baby. Who does that leave? Okay, if that's true and there are only 2 babies in that nursery, then yes, it would fall to child C, yes. Is that the truth of it? That you wanted to look after child C? No, not child C specifically, no. Tile 150 next, please. Can you just read your message? I said, it probably sounds odd, but it's how I feel. And Tile 151, Jennifer Jones Key replied, well, it's up to you, but I don't think it's going to help. It sounds very odd, and I would be the complete opposite. Can understand Nurse G, she's trying to look after you all. And then you replied? I replied, well, that's how I feel. From when I've experienced it at women's, I've needed to go straight back and have a sick baby, otherwise the image of the one you lost never goes. Why send Mel in if she's trying to look after us? She was in bits over it. That's a reference to the fact that Melanie Taylor was looking after the vented baby in nursery 1, isn't it? Yes. And tile 153, please? I said, well, I don't expect people to understand, but I know how I feel and how I've dealt with it before. I have voiced that, so can't do any more, but people should respect that. You wanted to get your own way, didn't you? No, I expressed a preference to go to nursery 1, as did Mel. And people should respect that. What does that mean in this context? People should respect what I'm asking and saying that that's how I potentially deal with something. So you should get your own way. No, it's not about having your own way. It's about how you deal with things. Mel and I had both asked to go into nursery 1. Tile 160, Jennifer Jones Key replies, I think they do respect it, but also trying to help you. Why don't you go in 1 for a bit? What did you take that to mean? That the staff there are trying to help me. Well, Jennifer Jones Key isn't working, is she? No. Right, okay. So what did you understand her to be saying to you by, why don't you go in 1 for a bit? Spend some time in nursery 1. Yes, and your response? Yeah, I've done a couple of meds in 1. I'll be fine. What did that mean? That I've checked or drawn up some medications in nursery 1. Then we have tile 162, Jennifer Jones Key again. It didn't sound like you would be. Sorry, was eating my tea. I assume that's a reference to you would be fine, was it? Yeah, I think so, yes. And then you responded? I said, forget I said anything, I'll be fine. It's part of the job, just don't feel like there's much team spirit tonight. Did you feel that you weren't getting your own way? Wasn't about getting my own way. She replied, I'm not going to forget, but just think you're way too hard on yourself. It's part of the job, but the worst part. I do believe it makes us stronger people. So that takes us to tile 164. The conversation continued at 167. So we're now at 22:53. Could you read this one you sent to Jennifer Jones Key, please? I said, unfortunately I've seen my fair share at women's, but you are supported differently, and here it's like people want to tell you how to think, feel. Anyway, onwards and upwards. Just shame I'm on with Mel and Nurse G. Sophie in 1, so haven't got her to talk to either. Tile 167, of course, Sophie was looking after child C, wasn't she? Yes. Then Jennifer Jones Key responded, work is work. A lot of girls say women's don't support and tell them to get on with it. I think they don't mean to tell you though, and we're over-caring sometimes. Yeah, that's not good, but you got Liz. Who is Liz in that context? Elizabeth Marshall, the band 4 that was on. The nursery nurse? Yes. Okay. We then resume the conversation at tile 174. Could you read your message, please? Women's can be awful, but I learnt the hard way you have to speak up to get support. I lost a baby one day, and a few hours later was given another dying baby born in the same cot space. Girls there said it was important to overcome the image. It was awful, but by the end of the day, I realised they were right. It's just different here. And then, a minute later, Anyway, forget it. I can only talk about it properly with those who knew him, and Mel not interested, so I'll overcome it myself. You get some sleep. Were you upset? Yes. Were you upset with Mel? No, I was upset just generally that I didn't feel my feelings were being considered. By who? By Nurse G and Mel. And what did you expect Mel to do for you? That Mel and I had both been present with child A, and that we could have supported one another with that. So you wanted her to talk to you about child A's death? Is that it? I wanted her to be there to support me, yes, and she had wanted to go in nursery 1 for the same reason, and she had been put in there. According to what you said this morning, Mel was responsible or potentially responsible for child A's death. Potentially, yes. And you wanted her to talk to you about it. No, I think what I'm suggesting here is the only way you overcome these things is by talking to colleagues that are also present. Shared experience. Yes. Is that what you enjoyed? Can you rephrase that? Is that what you enjoyed? What, talking to colleagues? I don't know. Sharing experience of babies collapsing and dying. No, we share experiences of very many reasons, not just that. Well, Jennifer Jones-Key responded, "That's a bit mean, isn't it? Don't have to know him to understand. We've all been there. Yep, off to bed now." You replied at 178? I replied, "I don't mean it like that, just that only those who saw him know what image I have in my head." And then the next one, please? Forget it. I'm obviously making more of it than I should. And then you said, "Sleep well" at tile 180. A couple of times there you said, "Forget it." Were you frustrated? Yes, I felt the conversation wasn't going anywhere, and I just wanted to leave it at that point. This is the conversation with Jennifer Jones-Key? Yes. What were you expecting her to say that she was not saying? What were you wanting from that she could have been maybe a little bit more understanding about what I was saying and how I was feeling? Did you want attention? I don't think attention is the right word. I think it's just recognition from a friend to acknowledge how I was feeling. Because you've been through such a dreadful experience, witnessing the death of child A, you wanted people to show you what? I don't think I wanted them to show me anything. She is a friend. I wanted to express how I felt to her, and I didn't feel she fully understood the context in which I was saying things, so I wanted to leave the conversation. Sophie Ellis, Melanie Taylor and Nurse G were all asked questions on your behalf, on the basis that Sophie Ellis was insufficiently qualified to have been looking after child C. Yes. Do you remember that? Yes. Is that your position? Yes. So does it come to this then? You wanted to be in nursery 1? Yes. Your wish was being frustrated by management? By the shift leader, not by management, but the shift leader, yes. And in your view, the person who had what you wanted, in other words, to be looking after the non-vented baby in nursery 1, wasn't sufficiently qualified for the job? No, Sophie wasn't, I don't think, in the correct position to care for child C. Why is that? She was recently qualified. She did not have the experience or the skills. Which particular skill was she deficient in? She didn't have experience of premature babies, small babies like child C. You see, one of the questions I asked you several minutes ago now was whether there was some sort of deficiency in care that led to child C's death. So I'd like you to explain to us why it is Sophie was insufficiently qualified to be doing the job she was doing. I'm not saying Sophie caused anything with child C. I'm just saying she was the least experienced member of staff on that shift. She was in nursery 1, the intensive care room, with another ventilated baby, and she had very little experience with small premature babies like child C that we need to keep a close observation of. So she had something you wanted? No. The care of child C. Wasn't that what you wanted? No, not specifically child C, no. Can we go to JJ13, please, which is the second of the child C police interviews. Here you can see there's a long question towards the top of the page. Which page, sorry? JJ13, it's a second police interview. Yes. What the police are asking about is some of the text messages that we've referred to. Yes. They read them to you. They ask you whether you recall the conversation. You say no. Then you ask the question, Can you tell me where you were when it took place? And you replied, I don't remember it. What do the messages relate to? What did you say then? I said, I don't remember. Was that the truth? Yes, because at this point that message had just been read out to me without any context. Isn't the context fairly obvious from the messages themselves? Not when I was being interviewed about multiple babies at multiple times, and this was just read out to me with no context. I did not immediately link that to that shift. All right, let's see what context was if we go back to page 11. Do you see there, they're talking about a statement that's been taken from Sophie Ellis? Yes. Who said she was out of the room when child C's alarm sounded. Is that right? Yes. That you, Lucy Letby, had your own designated baby in room 3. Yes. Sophie Ellis says that when she went into nursery 1, you were standing over or standing next to child C's cot. Yes. You were then asked a question. Sophie Ellis says that you said, he's just dropped his heart rate and saturations or something similar. Do you recall saying that to Sophie Ellis? Then turn over the page, you were asked a question. You were placed into nursery 3 during that shift, had your own designated baby to look after, and you said you didn't remember. Have you any explanation as to why you were in nursery 1 when the alarms went off? And you said you didn't remember. You mentioned that you might have been doing checks in nursery 1. Is that right? Yes. You were asked whether you've been treating child C, and you say not that you remember. You couldn't remember specifically why you were there. Do you see that? Yes. They then, having laid out all that to you, turn to the telephone conversation that we've just dealt with. Yes. Was that not sufficient context for you to remember what it was all about? No. Let's see what was happening at about this time in the neonatal review, please. So if we can go to that document in the white bundle. Here we see quite a lot of blue material, or blue typeface I should say, which reflects what you were doing. Is that right? Yes. So at line 2, 2000 hours, line 6, 2100, 17 and 20, 2110 and 2130, you're dealing with the children JE and PE. Then these are simply making entries on charts, observations, aren't they? Yes. No medications there, are there? No. Can you find us a medication that you were responsible for on this page? The one at line 38 for HM. HM was not one of the babies in nursery 1. No, it was my baby in nursery 3. Yes, any other medications there? Yes, the medication for NM. We've got JE at 2000 hours in nursery 3. Is that right? Yes. We've got PE, HM and EB at 2000 hours to 2250. Yes. We've got NM at 2221. Yes. None of those babies were in nursery 1, were they? No, but the medications are drawn up in nursery 1. Well, I know that's what you say, but context, as you say, is everything. If we go back to tile 161, I've done a couple of meds in 1, I'll be fine. That's a message you sent at 2234. Yes. You hadn't actually given any meds to any children in nursery 1, had you? No. As you say, context being important, when we looked at that conversation, what you wanted was to be treating one of the children in nursery 1. Yes, at the start of my shift, yes. And that's what you were suggesting you had been doing to your friend Jennifer Jones-Key, isn't it? Clinical practice is IV medication is always drawn up in 1. That's where the medications are all stored and kept, oral and IV. It could not be made up in a special care nursery. Are you covering yourself? No, it's standard practice. At 2300 hours, we know that Sophie Ellis gave child C his first feed and did his observations, don't we? Yes. Do you accept her evidence that she aspirated his stomach and obtained a little bit of green bile? Yes. Do you accept that if that's what she did, there wasn't any air in his stomach? No, if she's documented correctly, then yes. So no air in child C's stomach at 2300 hours? No, according to Nurse Ellis, yes. Have you any reason to doubt what she says? No. And then Nurse Ellis said that she did some meds for other children. Do you remember her saying that? Not specifically now, no. Well, rather than relying on our memories, perhaps we can rely on the neonatal review at lines 66 to 70. These are medications for MRE, who is, as a matter of fact, Melanie Taylor's other child or her charge in Nursery 1. Yes. She then told us that she left Nursery 1. Do you remember that? Yes. And that was the opportunity that you took to sabotage Child C, wasn't it? No. If we go to your interview, please. This is the second of your police interviews. If we start at JJ11 to give us the context, this is the interview that we looked at a short time ago, all right? Yes. It's dated the 11th of June 2019, and we've reviewed the first 2.5 pages, which precede the text conversation that I was asking you about around 10 minutes ago. Yes. If we move on, we can see that at the bottom of the page, page 13, including references to more of the text that I have asked you about. Yes. As it continued over onto page 14. Yes. And 15. Yes. Which is where you say, after the officer reading out quite a long series of texts, which are at tiles 175 through to 178, that you were frustrated with Jennifer Jones Key, with her response. Is that right? Disappointed more, I would say, but yes. Well, I'm using your word. Okay, yes. Frustrated. Then do you see a bit further down the page it says, okay, 2309 Lucy is when you sent that final message to Jen on that shift. Where were you when you sent that message? And you say that you don't remember. You say that in one of the messages at 2155, they repeat back to you your message, being in free is eating me up, which we have at tile 149. Do you see that? Yes, because I was unsure whether I was on shift that day. Yes, well, are you suggesting that the death of Child C wasn't very memorable? I don't think that's a fair point. I think at this point I was being interviewed on so many babies on various dates, I couldn't recall every baby that I'd looked after, or that this was specifically Child C at that time. Well, I'm not going to re-plough the field we ploughed earlier to give you the context. JJ16, please. The police conclude their review, as I reviewed with you, of that series of text messages. Do you see that? Yes. They say about 7 lines down, so you sent that file text to Jen at 2309 and Child C collapsed at 2315. Yes. So 6 minutes after you've sent that message, Child C has collapsed. Yes. What are your thoughts on that? And what did you reply? I said, I don't recall where I was at the time I sent that text. I might have been at the nurse's station, and then have gone into Nursery 1 to do something else. Yes. They're not telling you you were in Nursery 1, are they, at that point? Yes, I believe beforehand Sophie had suggested that I was there. Oh yes, right, at the beginning of the interview. Yes. You are here accepting, aren't you, that you were in Nursery 1 when you finished that series of texts with your friend Jennifer Jones Key, and you were feeling frustrated. No, I can't confirm that I sent that message in Nursery 1, no. No, not sent the message. You are confirming that you went, having sent the message, you went into Nursery 1. No, I'm not saying that, I don't think. I'm saying I don't recall where I was. Yes, you say, quote, I don't recall where I was at the time that I sent that text. Yes. I might have been at the nurse's station, and then I've gone into Nursery 1 to do something else. Yes, because just previous to that, it was stated to me that Sophie Ellis had seen me at the cot side, and I took that to be accurate. It is accurate, isn't it? It was on her word at that time. You were quite happy to accept it, were you? I haven't accepted it. I've said I don't recall. The death of Child C was very, very memorable, wasn't it? Yes. Yesterday, at the end of the day, we'd got to the position in the chronology, or the sequence of events relating to Child C, just before he collapsed at 23:15. Do you remember that? Yes. I had just been asking you about part of your police interview. Do you remember that? Yes. And I was asking you, as well as the part of your interview, about some text messages that you had sent to your friend Jennifer Jones Key. Yes. Just to put us back into the sequence, the text messages were sent at between 2301 and 2309. Yes. I was asking you questions specifically about what I was suggesting to you was your acceptance that at the time, this in the interview, your acceptance in interview, that at the time child C collapsed, you were in nursery 1. Do you remember that? Yes. And do you accept that you were in nursery 1 at the time child C collapsed? No. Why did you tell the police that you did accept it? Based on what Sophie Ellis saw and what was told to me, I took that to be accurate. I have no memory of being in the room. If you have no memory, how can you dispute? I'll dispute the fact that I've not agreed that I was definitely in the nursery. I'll put the question a different way then. Are you disputing that you were in the room at the time child C collapsed? Yes, I have no recollection of that. Well, I'm going to suggest to you, I'm not going to do this every time because otherwise we'll be here a long time, but I'm going to suggest to you that you're ignoring the question, and in due course I may suggest to the jury that the reason you're ignoring the question is because you can't answer the question, all right? So I'll give you one more opportunity to answer it. Do you dispute that you were in the room at the time child C collapsed? Yes. Why? Because I have no memory of that. Do you remember being born? No. Do you dispute that you were born? No. Just before the prosecution say that you were in the room with child C when he collapsed, you were texting Jennifer Jones Key. Yes. You had left one of your babies in the nursery, having just taken his or her observations. Do you remember that? I can't say when I left that baby, no. I don't know where I did the texting. Well, let's just look at this, if we can, please. Can you go to the neonatal review at page 3 of 9? Can you see there at line 65 the fact that you took the observations of the baby P.E.? Yes. And P.E. was in nursery 3, wasn't she? Yes. Do you remember P.E. as a matter of interest? No. Can you see what's in the line above that? Yes, Nicola Dennison has made an entry on the fluid balance chart. Yes, so just remind us, who is Nicola Dennison? The Band 4 nursery nurse. Why did you leave P.E. with Nicola Dennison? I haven't handed over care to Nicola Dennison. No, but whether or not you've handed over care, why did you leave a nursery nurse, a Band 4, someone of lesser qualification to you, with a nursery nurse? Well, I can't answer that. It's not unusual for nursery nurses to help out with feeds. Well, it may not be, but I'm asking why you left that child at that time with that nursery nurse. I have no memory of that. Whose responsibility was P.E.? Mine. Did you have something better to do? No, both babies that night had the care they needed. That's not the question. I'm not suggesting that Nicola Dennison couldn't do what you left her to do. What I'm asking you is why you left her to do it. I can't recall that now. Well, I will remind you. Can we go to tile 174? To moan to Jennifer Jones Key is the answer, isn't it? No. Sorry? No, I've not left somebody to go to text. I've also been doing things with J.E. as well at that time. Oh, show us on the neonatal review, please, what you were doing with J.E. 55 and 56. Where's that? Lines 55 and 56. Right, yes, okay, but we know that that time is the wrong time, don't we? Well, it's not a wrong time, it's an approximation. Sorry, could we go back to the text, please? According to your evidence you gave to the jury, you never use your phone in a clinical area. No, that's right. So you were not in the nursery at 23:01, were you? No. If you hadn't been texting your mate, would you have had time to feed P.E.? I did feed J.E. at that same time, which is possibly why Nurse Dennison looked after P.E. for me. Would you answer the question, please? If you hadn't been texting your mate, would you have had time to feed P.E.? I can't answer that. Because you were texting Jennifer Jones Key right up to 23:09, weren't you? Yes. 8 minutes. That might well have been long enough to feed your baby, mightn't it? Yes. P.E.? I can't recall the circumstances around that now. But it took you out of the nursery, didn't it, whatever the circumstances were? Yes, I would not have used my phone at the cot side, so yes, I would have been in the doorway or elsewhere on the unit, yes. This is the time we suggest that you were in nursery 1 with child C. Yes? I don't accept that, no. Mel Taylor wasn't in the room when child C collapsed, was she? I don't recall her evidence. Well, that's her evidence, and if we look at tile 185, please. Called to help baby, when arrived to baby, baby apneic. She told us she wasn't in the nursery, didn't she? I can't remember her saying that, but she is saying that she's come over to the baby, yes, to the baby's cot side. She doesn't specify being out of the nursery. That was her evidence. Okay, I can't recall her evidence right here, right now. Do you remember how Mel described you? No. Cool and calm. Do you dispute that? No, I would expect members of staff to be cool and calm on a unit. That's what we're trained to do. And you said to Sophie Ellis, he's just had a Braddy and a DSAT. I can't recall saying that. Do you dispute that you said it? I have no memory of saying it. Well, I'll ask you one more time. Do you dispute that you said it? Yes, because I have no memory of that. Do you remember the arrival of Dr. Catherine Davies at 23:26? No, not specifically. I remember doctors arriving, but I couldn't be specific on times, no. Can we go to tile 187, please? We can see the condition of child C there. Occasional intermittent gasps. Is that right? Yes. Is that what you saw, for example, with child I? Yes. The same sort of thing, is it? Yes. Then if we can scroll down, please, we have the 2 attempts at intubation, but, quote, unable to pass ETT as cords ++. Clear oral secretions, no blood seen. Neopuffed with Guidal airway, cords ++. She told us, Dr. Davies, that they were swollen, was the word she used. Had you put something down child C's throat? No. Do you agree that this becomes a theme of some of these collapses, that when the doctors look down the throats of these children, they are either swollen or bleeding? Yes, I know other doctors have commented on that, yes. Yes. This is not something that's caused by the use of a Guidal airway, is it? I can't answer that. There then ensued a very long and protracted decline for child C, didn't there? Yes. And child C had massive gastric dilation and ballooning of the stomach, didn't he? At this point? Well, that's the evidence of what was found after the event. Okay. Yesterday I was asking you about Sophie Ellis having aspirated child C's stomach just before she fed him that 1/2 of 1 ml of milk at 11 o'clock. Do you agree that something caused child C's stomach and bowel to dilate between 11 o'clock and his collapse? So the air you're referring to is before the collapse? That's what was found after he died. We're suggesting that's the reason for the collapse. I think if he was found with air when he's died, that could be related to the neopuff resuscitation. I'm not accepting that he had noticeable gas between 2300 and 2315. He was fed at 2300? Yes. Something caused him to collapse at 2315? Yes. Extensive CPR was undertaken? Yes. For some reason, a heart rate was restored. Do you remember that? Yes. And he clung to life for a further 5 hours plus? Yes. Had you ever seen that sort of a decline before? In the context of when he first collapsed? Yes, I have seen babies suddenly collapse before, yes. And cling to life the way child C did? No, I haven't seen that before, no. You enjoyed the aftermath of this, didn't you? No. Why were you so keen to involve yourself with the child C family as they cradled their dying son? Well, I don't agree with that. I don't recall being there for a lot of the time like they've said. Do you remember Nurse G said that she had to keep pulling you out of the family room? Yes. That was not disputed on your behalf with her, was it? I can't recall that now. Do you dispute it now? I'd been in the family room. Repeatedly? No, I agree that I've probably gone round at some point, but not repeatedly, no. I don't recall Nurse G having to pull me back out. Well, what Nurse G said was this. I asked Lucy to focus back in nursery 3 on baby J.E. because I was still heavily concerned about him. However, Lucy went into the family room a few times, and I asked her to come out and to leave that family, that is the family of child C, with Mel. Are you disputing that? Yes. Of course, Mel is senior to you, isn't she? Yes. More experienced? Yes. Given that Mel was looking after this family, what useful function were you performing? I don't understand the question, sorry. What were you contributing to this dreadful situation that the family of child C were going through? I can't recall whether I assisted Mel with any of the mementos, which is a two-person job. You can't recall it, so what? Are you disputing that you did assist her? No, I agree that I went to the family room at times. It's the conversation with Nurse G that I don't recall. Right. So given that you are agreeing with what she says, that you did go in there several times, I'll return only once more to the question, what useful contribution were you making for this family? I can't recall from my memory now. So does that mean that you dispute that you were making a useful contribution? I'd have to check the charts to see if there's anything that I co-signed at that time. The charts wouldn't be in the family room, would they? The bereavement checklist, yes. You leave that with the family, do you? The bereavement checklist? All the paperwork for a baby is kept in their cot side, so... He wasn't in a cot. He was in the arms of his mother. No, but I may have been assisting dying, wasn't he? Wasn't he, Lucy Letby? Yes. Yes. So one more time. Tell us what you were doing. I can't recall from memory. I would have to see if there was something that I signed as doing with Mel, such as the hand and footprints. Of course, if that was what you were doing, Nurse G would have approved it, wouldn't she? I have no memory of that conversation with Nurse G. Are hand and footprints taken when the baby is still alive? Yes, either like that or when they've passed. Do you remember what else Child C's mum told the jury about what you did? I'd made a comment about saying goodbye to Child C and putting him in a basket. Yes. You've said your goodbyes now. Do you want to put him in here? Agreed evidence. Do you still agree it, or do you dispute it? No, I don't recall ever saying that, no. So you're disputing it now, are you? Yes. Even though it's agreed evidence. I see. When did you decide that you were disputing that bit of evidence? I don't understand. It was agreed when it was read to the jury, you see, so that's the starting point. We're now at the end point where you're disputing it. I'm asking you, when between when it was read and today, you decided that you were disputing it. I don't think I've ever accepted definitively that that's what I said, if that's an accurate recollection by the parents, but I don't recall that. You were enjoying what was going on, weren't you, Lucy Letby? No. Did you remember, before you saw all of the evidence in this case, that Child C's collapse had happened just after he was first given that 1/2 of 1 ml of milk? Yes. Why did you remember that particular detail? Because Sophie Ellis had been very upset that Child C had deteriorated so soon after his first feed that she had given him. Was she blaming herself? She was questioning whether it was related. Yes, she was very upset. But you knew what really happened, didn't you? No. Did you enjoy seeing Sophie Ellis upset? No.